The movie theater was almost empty that chilly November night in 1993. The final credits of Jurassic Park rolled across the screen as the soft hum of the projector filled the dark room. When the lights slowly came up, the janitor on duty, a man named Carl Jensen, noticed something strange. In the back row, a small figure sat perfectly still, head tilted to the side, clutching a crumpled piece of paper in his tiny fist. Carl approached quietly. "Hey, buddy. The movie's over," he whispered. No response. The boy was about 4 years old, wearing a red sweater 2 sizes too big and sneakers that didn't match. His cheeks were tear-streaked but dry now, his eyes swollen from crying. When Carl touched his shoulder gently, the child startled awake, blinking at the sudden brightness. "Where's your mom or dad?" Carl asked softly. The boy looked around, confused, scanning the now empty rows. They went to get popcorn," he mumbled, voice trembling. Carl's stomach sank. The concession stand had been closed for hours. He took the boy to the lobby, called the police, and waited. No one came for him. No one called. No one claimed him. When the officers searched his pockets, they found only one thing: a half-torn movie ticket, the print almost unreadable but with a faint line at the bottom that said, "Matinee, Regal Theater, Mayfield," and a few faded letters of what looked like a last name, Anda. At the county shelter, the staff named him Eli, short for Elijah because, as one volunteer said, "He looks like a little fighter." The boy didn't remember his last name or where he lived. He remembered flashes, popcorn smell, a woman's voice saying, "Be brave for me," and the echo of footsteps fading away. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The police circulated his picture, contacted every nearby county, ran his fingerprints through every missing child database they had. Nothing. It was as if he had appeared out of thin air. Eli grew quieter. He stopped asking when his mother would return. He started drawing, mostly movie screens, stars, and a single red seat with a little boy sitting alone. One of the social workers, Linda, began keeping those drawings in a folder, hoping that someday they might mean something. When a local couple, David and Carol Whitman, came looking to adopt, they met Eli. Carol knelt down, smiled, and said, "Hi, sweetheart. Do you like movies?" Eli looked up, eyes wide, and nodded slowly. That was all it took. The paperwork was completed within months. Eli Whitman, that was his new name. His new life began in a small blue house with a porch swing, a dog named Buddy, and parents who tucked him in every night. But sometimes, even as Carol kissed his forehead goodnight, Eli would whisper into the darkness, "Are you still watching me, Mom?" He didn't know who he was talking to, the woman who left him, or the woman who saved him. But fate wasn't done with Eli, because 3 decades later that same forgotten movie ticket would resurface and reveal the truth no one had ever expected. If you were in Eli's shoes, would you want to know the truth, even if it could change everything you believe about your life? Tell us in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for part 2 of this incredible story. Years passed, and the world around Eli changed faster than he could follow, but inside him the memories of that night in the theater never quite faded. They were blurry, yes, like fragments of a dream, but sometimes when he smelled popcorn or heard the clicking sound of a film reel, they came rushing back. The Whitmans were good people. They gave him warmth, security, and a kind of love he had only dreamed of. Yet, deep inside, Eli always felt like a guest in someone else's life, as though he was playing a role that didn't quite fit. He was grateful, but a piece of him remained untethered. By his teenage years, Eli had turned into a quiet but passionate film enthusiast. Movies were his refuge. They gave him worlds where lost kids found their parents, where love defeated fear, and where endings always made sense. When he got his first job at 16, it wasn't flipping burgers or mowing lawns. He applied at the Regal Mayfield Cinema, the same theater where his story had begun. The manager didn't even know the irony. Neither did Eli. He only felt drawn to that place. Something magnetic about the smell of the carpet, the sound of the projector room, the faded red seats that still whispered stories from decades past. In college, he majored in film studies and business, returning to the theater years later as its new manager. Locals adored him. He restored old posters, hosted charity screenings, and even set up an annual family movie night where kids could watch films for free. Everyone thought it was just his generous nature. No one knew he was trying to fill an emptiness inside him, a silence that echoed louder with every year that passed. One evening, after closing time, Eli stayed behind to organize some old boxes from the storage room. Dust covered everything: film reels, ticket stubs, faded flyers. As he rummaged through them, his fingers brushed against something brittle. He pulled it out. A small yellowed envelope. Inside it, a handful of ancient ticket stubs, and one in particular that made his heart stop. The ink was faint, the edges torn, but he knew it instantly. The same words, the same pattern, the same faded print. Matinee, Regal Theater, Mayfield, July 10th, 1993. And at the bottom, this time more visible than before, the faint outline of a name. Anderson. He froze. His throat tightened. Could it be his? For a moment he felt dizzy. The air around him seemed to hum. He sat down, clutching the ticket like a lifeline. That name, Anderson, it felt familiar in a strange way, like something whispered in a dream. He looked through the other tickets, hoping for more clues, but none of them had that name. Only one did. His heart raced as he noticed something else, the seat number printed on it. Row G, seat 7, the same seat where the janitor had found him sleeping. His hands trembled. "This isn't just a coincidence," he muttered. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he searched every database he could find, every article, every archived report. Anderson was too common a name, but he narrowed the search to Ohio, 1993, hoping for a miracle. That's when he found it. A headline in an old newspaper archive. Family of 3 missing after house fire. Mayfield Township, 1993. The victims were listed as Robert Anderson, Martha Anderson, and their daughter Lucy Anderson, 6. No mention of a son. Eli stared at the screen, his pulse pounding. A family. A fire. The same year. The same town. And a missing child that no one knew existed. Could he be that missing boy? He felt a shiver crawl up his spine. He didn't know it yet, but uncovering that single name would ignite a chain of revelations that would test everything he thought he knew about his past, his parents, and the reason he was left in that dark theater all those years ago. The truth was closer than Eli could ever imagine, but to uncover it, he'd have to confront the one person who never wanted the past to resurface. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. The name Anderson echoed in his mind like a whisper from the dark. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that dimly lit movie theater, smelled the buttery popcorn, heard that soft voice again. Be brave for me. By sunrise, he had made up his mind. He couldn't carry this secret alone. He needed to tell the people who had given him a life, the only parents he'd ever known. He drove through the quiet streets of Mayfield to the small blue house with the white porch swing. The world outside still slept, but inside, the smell of pancakes and coffee filled the air. Carol Whitman was in the kitchen humming softly as she cooked, while David sat at the table reading the newspaper. It looked like any other morning, but Eli's heartbeat was uneven, his palms slick. "Mom, Dad," he began, voice unsteady. "I found something at the theater last night." Carol turned, smiling. "Did the projector finally break again?" Eli shook his head. "No. I found a ticket stub, an old one, from 1993. David looked up from the paper. "That's the year?" "The year I was found," Eli finished for him. "It has a name printed on it. Anderson." The silence that followed was unbearable. Carol's face paled. She set the spatula down and sat slowly, her hands trembling just enough for Eli to notice. "Where did you find it?" she asked. "In a box in the theater's storage room. I think it's mine." Carol and David exchanged a long, wordless glance. It was the look of two people who had been keeping something for far too long. Then Carol rose quietly and went to the hallway. When she returned, she was holding a worn cardboard box tied with twine. "I hoped this day would never come," she whispered. "But maybe it's time." Inside were a few objects wrapped in tissue paper, a red sweater button, a folded drawing of a movie screen, and an envelope. Eli's breath caught as he unfolded the paper inside. A faded photograph of himself as a child, standing beside a little girl with dark braids. On the back, written in neat, slanted handwriting, were 4 words. Be brave for me. M. Eli stared at it. His throat tightened. Who gave you this? It came from the shelter, David said. From your old caseworker, Linda. She told us not to show you unless you asked about your past. She said it could be dangerous. Eli frowned. Dangerous? Why? Carol hesitated. She didn't explain, only said that someone didn't want you found. That was enough. Within an hour, Eli was in his car again, driving toward the assisted living home where Linda, now retired, lived. The November sky was low and gray, the air heavy with cold. When she opened the door, Linda smiled in surprise. Eli Whitman, I always knew this day would come. I found a name, he said. Anderson. And a photo. You told my parents it was dangerous to dig. Why? Her expression changed. She motioned for him to come inside. They sat across from each other on a small couch, a pot of tea steaming between them. Because, Eli, she said quietly, the night you were found there was also a fire. Eli's stomach turned. The Anderson house? She nodded. A family of 3, Robert, Martha, and their daughter Lucy. Officially it was ruled an accident, but the investigator believed someone started it deliberately. The case was never closed. Eli leaned forward. Then how did I survive? That's what we could never prove, Linda replied. But a woman called the police from a payphone that same night. She was the one who told them where to find you. Her voice was hoarse, burned, terrified. The officer noted she refused to give her name, but she knew the seat number where you were left. Row G, seat 7, Eli whispered. Linda nodded. Only your mother could have known that. For a moment, the world went still. Eli felt his pulse in his ears, every beat a question without an answer. Why didn't you tell me? He asked. Because I was afraid whoever started that fire would come looking for you, she said. You were the only survivor. Linda rose and walked to a shelf, pulling down a small unmarked folder. From it, she handed him a brass key attached to a faded tag that read, Locker 12, Cleveland Bus Station. I've kept this safe for 32 years, she said. It came in a brown envelope a month after the fire. No return address. Inside was this key and a note that said, For Eli, when he's ready. Eli stared at it, the metal cold in his hand. What's in the locker? A cassette tape, Linda said. And I think, your mother's voice. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the streets like a blank page. Eli knew what he had to do. He was going to Cleveland, and whatever waited for him in that locker, truth, pain, or both, would finally tell him why he was left behind. But as Eli drove away, he didn't notice the dark sedan parked across the street, the one that had been following him since the night he found the ticket stub. The next morning, Cleveland was wrapped in fog. The highway stretched before Eli like an endless strip of gray ribbon, the world silent except for the hum of the tires and the soft whir of the heater. The brass key lay on the passenger seat, glinting faintly whenever the light shifted. He hadn't told Carol and David where he was going. Not yet. They had already carried his secrets for long enough. This part, the truth, had to be his alone. Downtown Cleveland was still half asleep when he parked outside the old Greyhound bus terminal. The building looked forgotten by time. Cracked windows, faded paint, and a few homeless men huddled near the entrance for warmth. Inside, the air was stale with the smell of oil, dust, and coffee. He walked toward the row of metal lockers, his footsteps echoing across the tiled floor. Each locker had a dent or a scratch, like scars from years of strangers passing through. He found locker 12, second from the bottom, its lock rusted but still intact. Eli hesitated. His hand trembled as he slid the key into the slot. For a moment it didn't turn. Then with a faint click, the door popped open. Inside sat a small cassette tape wrapped in tissue paper, and beside it, a folded envelope yellowed with age. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. The same looping style as the note on the photograph, For Eli, when he's old enough. He sat down on a nearby bench, the cold metal biting through his jeans. Carefully, he unfolded the letter. The ink had faded, but the words were still legible. My sweet Eli, if you're reading this, it means I couldn't come back for you. I want you to know I never abandoned you. I left you to save you. The fire wasn't an accident. Someone was after your father because of what he found. I thought I could protect you, but when the house went up in flames, I only had time to grab you and run. I left your sister behind. I thought she was already gone. I was wrong. If you ever find this, go to the place where your father worked. The answers are there. Be brave for me. Mom Eli's eyes burned. The words blurred, but he kept reading, tracing the signature with his finger. Martha Anderson. He turned to the cassette tape. There was no label, no date, only the faint hiss of old plastic when he pressed play on a dusty portable recorder he found at a pawn shop nearby. Static filled the air, then a woman's voice cracked through, tired, trembling, but familiar in a way that made his chest ache. Eli, my little boy, if you're hearing this, I couldn't make it back. I didn't mean to leave you. They were watching the house. They wanted the documents your father had from the lab. He discovered something he shouldn't have. Something about the chemical tests at the Mill Creek plant. People died because of it. He wanted to expose them, and they killed him for it. Her breath hitched. They'll look for you, Eli. That's why you can't use our name. Someone helped me get you out. A man named Harlan McCready. Trust him. He knows the truth. He'll know what to do. Then silence. Eli sat frozen. His hands shook, but not from the cold. A storm of grief, confusion, and anger raged inside him. His real parents hadn't abandoned him. They had been running from something far darker. He left the station and stood on the curb, his mind spinning. Harlan McCready. The name sounded familiar. He remembered Linda mentioning it, the investigator who never closed the fire case. He pulled out his phone, searching the name. Within seconds, an address appeared. Harlan McCready, private investigator, retired, Mayfield Township. He couldn't believe it. The man lived less than 20 minutes from his own theater. But as he turned to head for his car, something made him pause. A black sedan idled across the street, its tinted windows glinting in the weak daylight. He felt the weight of someone's eyes on him. He slipped the letter into his jacket and pretended not to notice, forcing his breath to steady. When he started the engine, the sedan pulled out too, keeping a careful distance. The chase had begun. Eli didn't know who was behind that car, or why they still cared after 32 years. But one thing was certain. Someone didn't want the truth about the Anderson fire coming to light. And as he drove toward the address of the man who held the final piece of the puzzle, he realized the line between memory and danger was thinner than ever. The closer he got to his real name, the more deadly it became. When Eli finally met the man his mother told him to trust, the truth he uncovered wouldn't just rewrite his past. It would reveal a secret someone had killed to keep buried. The drive back to Mayfield felt endless. Every passing mile deepened the tension coiled in Eli's chest. He checked his mirror every few minutes. The black sedan was still there, following at a steady distance, never too close, never too far. Whoever was inside knew exactly what they were doing. As he turned off the highway and onto a narrow country road lined with frozen cornfields, the sedan suddenly slowed, then disappeared behind a line of trees. Eli exhaled, gripping the steering wheel so tightly his knuckles turned white. He didn't know whether to feel relieved or more afraid. The address led him to an old farmhouse on the outskirts of Mayfield Township. A wooden sign near the gate read, McCready Investigations, Retired. The house looked weathered but sturdy, smoke curling lazily from the chimney. Eli parked, stepped out, and walked toward the porch, clutching the letter in his jacket pocket. He knocked twice. The door opened to reveal a tall man in his 70s, his gray hair combed neatly, his posture still upright despite the years. His sharp blue eyes studied Eli for a long moment. You must be Elijah, he said at last. You've got your mother's eyes. Eli froze. You knew her? I helped her the night of the fire, Harlan McCready replied. Come in, son. We have a lot to talk about. Inside, the house smelled of coffee and old books. The walls were lined with boxes of files, old photographs, and framed newspaper clippings about the Mill Creek chemical plant. Eli recognized the name instantly. It was in his mother's letter. She said you could be trusted, Eli said, sitting down. Harlan nodded, pouring coffee into 2 chipped mugs. Your father, Robert, was one of the top chemists at Mill Creek. He found proof that the company was leaking toxic waste into the local water supply, poisoning entire neighborhoods. When he threatened to go public, they sent people to silence him. Eli's heart pounded. They killed him. Yes, Harlan said. They burned your house to destroy the evidence. But your mother escaped with you. I helped her hide you that night, but she refused to leave the county. She said she had to go back for your sister. Eli's breath caught. Lucy. The report said she died. Harlan looked down. That's what everyone was told, but her body was never found. I believe she was taken, used as leverage to keep your mother quiet. The words hit Eli like a physical blow. Taken? By who? Harlan's eyes darkened. By the same people who burned your house, men working for Mill Creek's private security. The company went bankrupt years ago, but some of those men still exist. One of them has been watching you. Eli stiffened. The black car. Harlan nodded grimly. They must have known you found the tape. They're afraid of what's on it, and what else your mother left behind. What else? Eli asked, voice shaking. Harlan reached into a drawer and pulled out a sealed brown envelope. This. Your mother mailed it to me a week before the fire. I kept it hidden all these years. Inside were several pages of handwritten notes and a small photograph. A group of men in suits standing outside the Mill Creek plant. One man stood at the center, smiling proudly. Eli froze. It was David Whitman, his adoptive father. Eli's pulse thundered in his ears. No, that can't be right. My dad was an engineer at Mill Creek, Harlan said softly. He worked under your father. When Robert found the contamination evidence, David helped the company cover it up. But when he realized the plant would go to deadly lengths to protect itself, he turned whistleblower. He was supposed to meet Robert that night, before the fire started. Your mother never knew that. Eli sat back, dizzy. His entire life twisted into something unrecognizable. So, my adoptive father tried to stop them? He didn't even know I was... Harlan's voice softened. He didn't know you were Robert's son. The adoption went through state channels. Pure coincidence. Or maybe fate. Outside, tires crunched on gravel. Both men turned toward the window. The black sedan had returned, headlights cutting through the mist. Go, Harlan hissed. There's a back door. Take the documents and run. But before Eli could move, the sound of gunfire shattered the air. The front window exploded. Harlan stumbled back, clutching his shoulder. Run, Eli! Eli ducked behind the couch, grabbing the envelope and bolting through the back. The cold air hit him like ice. He sprinted toward the trees behind the farmhouse, his breath visible in white bursts. The sedan's doors opened. 2 men stepped out, shouting. He didn't look back. He just ran. By the time he reached the main road, the sirens were already in the distance. Harlan's neighbors must have called for help. Eli collapsed behind a fence, gasping, the envelope still in his hands. When he finally opened it again under the flickering streetlight, one last page fluttered out. On it, written in his mother's handwriting, were the words, If you find this, you'll know the truth. Not just of who you are, but who still carries your father's fight. Forgive them, Eli. Some people destroy the past to protect the future. He closed his eyes. Tears burned hot against the cold air. The truth had cost him everything. His peace, his safety, the simple certainty of who he thought he was. But it had also given him something more powerful than revenge. Clarity. He would finish what his parents started. Because after 32 years, Eli Anderson finally knew his real name and what it stood for. Would you have wanted to uncover the truth if it meant losing everything you thought was real? Share your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more emotional true stories like this one.